You know those games that defined your childhood? Yet somehow no one talks about them anymore. Games that made you feel like an action hero, one trigger pull at a time. Remember that one game on your old Windows PC? The one that came on a random CD, ran smoother than anything else, and made you feel like an unstoppable cop? No, not Counter-Strike, not Max Payne. I'm talking about Virtua Cop 2, the forgotten Sega classic that turned your humble desktop computer into a full-blown action movie. It was fast, cinematic, and way ahead of its time, and yet nobody talks about it anymore. Today, we're digging into why Virtua Cop 2 on PC wasn't just a port, it was a masterpiece of PC gaming that deserves a comeback. Let's rewind back to the 1990s. In 1995, Sega's AM2 division, the same geniuses behind Daytona USA, Virtua Fighter, and Outrun, had just pulled off something special, Virtua Cop. It revolutionized light gun games with its 3D polygonal enemies, cinematic camera work, and that iconic target reticle system. A year later, Sega decided to up the ante with Virtua Cop 2, faster, louder, smarter, and far more ambitious. Released in arcades and later on the Sega Saturn and Windows PC, VCOP 2 put you back in the shoes of elite law officers Michael Hardy, James Schools, and Janet Marshall as they took down a crime syndicate threatening the city. It wasn't just a sequel, it was Sega saying this is what future of arcade shooters looks like. And for a brief glorious moment, it truly was. The year was 1997. Sega had already conquered the arcades with Virtua Cop 2, but now they wanted to bring that experience home. So they teamed up with Empire Interactive to port it to Windows PC. But here in India, very few even knew it existed back then. Most homes did not have PCs yet, and the few that did were running Windows 95 on 16 MB of RAM. So while the West was blasting criminals in Virtua City, most of us wouldn't touch this game for another decade. By the mid 2000s, when Pentium 4s and CRT monitors became common, Virtua Cop 2 quietly made its way into Indian homes through cheap CDs, bundled packs, and sometimes creative distribution channels. It wasn't new, it wasn't trending, but it was perfect for the machine we had. Booting it up on a Windows system felt like stepping into an arcade right from our bedroom. You'd hear that energetic soundtrack, see those crisp 3D models, and suddenly your beige box of a computer was an action machine. For Indian players discovering it in 2000s, Virtua Cop 2 was magic. The mouse aiming felt natural. The missions were short enough to run between school and dinner, and it actually ran on our dusty home PCs. It didn't need a graphics card, it didn't need the internet. All it needed was a working mouse and enough patience to double click the .exe file without crashing the system. What made the PC version of VCOP 2 stand out wasn't just how it looked, it was how it played. Sega completely retuned the game for mouse aiming, which turned out to be a game changer. The original arcade version used a light gun, but with a mouse you suddenly had pinpoint precision. Each headshot felt satisfying, every reload perfectly timed. And here's the cool part, you could map your own keys. Reload with spacebar, swap guns with right click. It was customizable, something few shooters offered back then. For many of us, this was our first FPS experience. It became the unofficial training ground before games like IGI, Counter-Strike 1.6 and Max Payne. It was training our reflexes, our aim, our sense of timing, all while blasting polygonal enemies to bits. I still remember the first time I played Virtua Cop 2 on PC. My parents had bought a family computer, and one of the games that was installed was VCOP 2. I started it up because I was curious as to what it was, and boy am I glad I did, because I was hooked the minute I started playing it. I was chasing criminals through a virtual city, the soundtrack blasting from those tinny desktop speakers, the enemies shouting freeze. For weeks I'd sneak in after homework, mouse in one hand, chips in the other, trying to beat the beginner level without losing a life. Yes, I was a kid back then, and I didn't have the hand-eye coordination that I have now. There was no leaderboard, no achievements, no online co-op, just raw, heart-pounding fun. That's what VCOP 2 gave me, the feeling of being a hero right there in my room, running on 1 GB of RAM. And the crazy part is, the PC version was built for moments like this. It wasn't just a port, it was Sega reimagining the arcade hit for a new kind of gamer. Sega didn't just port the game, they optimized it. The PC version supported resolutions up to 480p, which for 1997 looked unbelievably crisp. Load times were snappy, the textures sharper than the Saturn version, and that mouse aiming, pure bliss for accuracy junkies. It even had 2-player split screen if you dared to share a keyboard, which by the way was total chaos and absolutely hilarious. For a time when most PC ports were lazy reskins, this was a masterclass in how to adapt arcane action for the desktop. It was a bridge game, connecting the chaos of arcades with the growing power of home computers. For a while, VCOP 2 on PC became the go-to game at cyber cafes and home setups alike. It wasn't multiplayer, but it was the perfect pass the mouse game. One friend plays, another reloads for him, and everyone else shouts while you shoot a civilian. Gaming sites at the time called it the most cinematic shooter you can play without a light gun. The soundtrack, that punchy Technopolis vibe, turned every level into a 90s action montage. It wasn't just fun, it was a showcase of what 3D gaming could look like if it was done right. But as great as it was, Virtua Cop 2's time was short. By the late 90s, PC gaming in the West was evolving fast. Gamers there were discovering true first-person shooters, Quake, Half-Life, Unreal Tournament. Why stay on rails when you could roam freely? The light gun aesthetic suddenly felt old-fashioned, and with no official remaster, no online re-release, and fading arcade nostalgia, Virtua Cop 2 slowly slipped away from mainstream memory. By the time Indian gamers discovered VCOP 2, the rest of the world had already moved on to Half-Life and Call of Duty. But that's what makes it special. It bridged our local 2000s PC era with Sega's 90s arcade legacy. So why does Virtua Cop 2 still matter today? Because it represents a lost design philosophy, simplicity, speed, and satisfaction. There were no cinematics to skip, no battle passes, no 40-minute tutorials. You just clicked start, drew your weapon, and within seconds you were in the middle of chaos. That immediacy, that arcade heart, is what many modern video games try to recapture. Even VR shooters today borrow VCOP's DNA. Short, high-intensity bursts with precision aiming and reactive environments. And for developers, it's a blueprint of efficient design. Every enemy spawn, every camera movement, every reload sound, perfectly timed for the flow. It's a reminder that sometimes the most memorable games aren't the biggest ones, they're the tightest. Virtua Cop 2 was one of those rare PC games that did everything right, but still slipped through the cracks. It didn't get a sequel on PC, it didn't get a remaster, it didn't get the recognition it deserved. For a lot of Indian gamers, Virtua Cop 2 wasn't nostalgia, it was our beginning. It was the first time we felt the thrill of precision shooting. The first time our home PCs felt like an arcade machine. We played it years late, but the timing didn't matter, because when you finally discover a masterpiece, it always feels brand new. If you enjoyed this dive into the golden age of PC gaming, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. What's your most nostalgic PC game from the 2000s? Maybe it's Road Rash, Red Alert, or even Virtua Cop 2. Whatever it is, let's bring those memories back. Thanks for watching and see you next time.